deep inside the Kahuta Research Laboratories, approximately 35 kilometers southeast of Islamabad, at exactly 0240 local time on April 25, 2026, a convoy of 3 unmarked vehicles passed through the fourth and final security checkpoint of Pakistan's most classified nuclear facility. According to operational reports being discussed in defense circles across 3 continents, the lead vehicle carried documentation that had been authorized at the highest levels of Pakistan's National Command Authority. Documentation that, if the assessments circulating through Western intelligence are accurate, authorized the transfer of centrifuge design specifications, enrichment protocols, and weapons-grade material handling procedures to a recipient state whose identity has sent shockwaves through every nuclear-armed capital on Earth. The facility's perimeter lights cast long shadows across the concrete blast walls as the convoy disappeared into the night, carrying with it the most dangerous cargo in modern proliferation history and the end of the non-proliferation order that the world has depended on since 1970. The corridor smelled of diesel exhaust and machine oil, that distinctive industrial perfume of a facility that operates 24 hours a day, 365 days a year, processing uranium hexafluoride through cascades of centrifuges spinning at 70,000 revolutions per minute. The guards at the final checkpoint, according to composite accounts drawn from personnel familiar with high-security nuclear logistics, did not speak. They checked the authorization codes against a sealed envelope delivered by military courier 12 hours earlier, verified the biometric identifiers of the convoy commander, and raised the barrier. The entire process took less than 4 minutes. What passed through that barrier in those 4 minutes will take decades to undo, if it can be undone at all. What did Pakistan transfer and to whom? Why did Pakistan's military establishment authorize a transfer that violates every international norm, every treaty obligation, and every assurance Pakistan has given to the United States across 3 decades of nuclear diplomacy? What weapon systems and delivery capabilities does this transfer enable? And what does it mean for India, for Israel, for the entire architecture of nuclear deterrence that has prevented catastrophic war for 70 years? Stay with us. If you want analysis that goes where others will not, hit the like button, subscribe, and turn on notifications. Drop your thoughts in the comments. Pakistan's nuclear weapons program is the most opaque, the most politically sensitive, and the most proliferation-prone nuclear arsenal on Earth. Pakistan is estimated to possess between 160 and 170 nuclear warheads, making it the 5th largest nuclear arsenal in the world. The weapons are deployed on a triad of delivery systems: the Shaheen-3 medium-range ballistic missile, with a range of 2,750 kilometers, the Ra'ad-2 air-launched cruise missile, with a range of 600 kilometers, delivered from modified JF-17 and Mirage-3 fighter aircraft, and the Babur-3 submarine-launched cruise missile with a range of 450 kilometers, tested from the Agosta 90B submarine platform. The centrifuge technology at the heart of Pakistan's enrichment program traces its lineage to the design stolen by A.Q. Khan from the Urenco consortium in the Netherlands in the 1970s. Designs that Khan subsequently shared with Iran, Libya, and North Korea through a clandestine proliferation network that operated for over 2 decades before being partially dismantled in 2004. The recipient of the current transfer, according to assessments being studied across Western intelligence agencies, is Saudi Arabia. The kingdom has maintained a strategic relationship with Pakistan's nuclear establishment since the 1980s, when Saudi financing reportedly contributed to the development costs of Pakistan's nuclear weapons program in exchange for an understanding, never formally documented, never publicly acknowledged, but widely believed within intelligence circles, that Pakistan would provide nuclear weapons or nuclear technology to Saudi Arabia if the kingdom's security environment deteriorated to the point where a nuclear deterrent became existentially necessary. That point has now arrived. The Saudi calculation is driven by 3 converging threats. The first is Iran's advancing nuclear program, which has enriched uranium to 60% purity, a technical threshold from which the leap to weapons-grade 90% enrichment requires weeks rather than months. The second is the erosion of the American security umbrella, demonstrated by the ceasefire terms that accepted Iranian regional influence, the carrier repositioning away from the Gulf, and the growing signals from Washington that American extended deterrence commitments in the Middle East are not unconditional. The third is the accelerating alignment between Iran and Russia, including the transfer of advanced Russian weapons systems that give Iran capabilities against which Saudi Arabia's current American-supplied defense architecture may prove inadequate. In New Delhi, the reaction was immediate, visceral, and bordered on strategic panic. India's National Security Advisor convened an emergency meeting of the Cabinet Committee on Security within hours of the intelligence assessment reaching Indian channels. For India, a Saudi nuclear capability supplied by Pakistan represents a nightmare scenario on two axes. On the first axis, it validates Pakistan's nuclear program as a proliferation platform, enhancing Pakistani prestige and strategic leverage in the Islamic world at India's expense. On the second axis, it introduces nuclear weapons into the Arabian Peninsula, a region where Indian economic interests, energy dependencies, and diaspora population concentrations are enormous. Over 8 million Indian nationals live and work in the Gulf states. India imports over 60% of its crude oil from the Middle East. A nuclear-armed Saudi Arabia, potentially aligned with a nuclear-armed Pakistan in a broader Islamic security framework, represents a strategic encirclement that Indian defense planners have warned about for decades, but never expected to materialize this quickly. In Washington, the State Department issued what diplomatic correspondents described as the most forceful non-proliferation warning since the disclosure of the AQ Khan network in 2004. The warning, delivered privately to Islamabad through multiple channels simultaneously, reportedly threatened the suspension of all remaining American military aid to Pakistan, the imposition of comprehensive nuclear-related sanctions, and a formal referral to the United Nations Security Council. The problem with the warning is that Pakistan has already calculated its cost. American military aid to Pakistan has declined from over $2 billion per year at its peak to less than $300 million in recent years. Pakistan's primary military supplier is now China, not the United States. Pakistan's primary economic partner is now China, not the United States. The leverage that Washington once held over Islamabad, the financial and military lifeline that gave American warnings teeth, has been structurally eroded by China's rise as Pakistan's indispensable partner. The warning is a paper tiger, and Islamabad knows it. In Beijing, the calculation is layered. China does not want nuclear proliferation in the Middle East. Nuclear proliferation creates instability, and instability threatens Chinese energy supplies and Belt and Road investments. But China also does not want to confront Pakistan, its most reliable regional ally, over a transfer that serves Chinese strategic interests by reducing Saudi dependence on the United States and deepening the structural ties between Islamabad and Riyadh that China has cultivated for decades. Beijing's response will be studied silence, neither endorsement nor opposition, a diplomatic void that Pakistan will interpret as consent. In Moscow, the proliferation is viewed through the lens of great power competition. A Saudi nuclear capability reduces American influence in the Gulf by removing the nuclear umbrella as a source of Saudi dependence on Washington. Russia's interest is structural. Anything that weakens American alliance networks serves Russian strategic objectives, regardless of the proliferation risks. First, the Pakistani nuclear transfer, if confirmed, represents the most significant proliferation event since North Korea's first nuclear test in 2006, and possibly since China's first test in 1964. Second, the transfer destroys the credibility of the Nuclear Non-Proliferation Treaty by demonstrating that a signatory state can share weapons technology with a non-signatory without facing consequences severe enough to deter the action. Third, The cascading proliferation effect will be rapid. If Saudi Arabia acquires nuclear technology from Pakistan, Turkey, Egypt, and the UAE will face overwhelming strategic pressure to pursue their own capabilities, producing a multi-nuclear Middle East within a decade. Fourth, India's strategic position is weakened on multiple axes simultaneously, and India's response, whether accelerated nuclear modernization, expanded missile defense, or diplomatic realignment, will ripple through the entire South Asian security environment with consequences that compound over years. The convoy that passed through the gates of Kahuta on April 25th carried more than centrifuge designs and enrichment protocols. It carried the end of an era, the era in which the spread of nuclear weapons was managed, contained, and limited by a system of treaties, inspections, and great power guarantees that depended ultimately on the ability of the United States to enforce compliance. That ability has been eroded by strategic overextension, by the loss of leverage over key states, and by the rise of alternative power centers that provide the diplomatic cover and the economic lifelines that allow proliferating states to act without fear of consequence. The gates have opened. The technology is moving. And the world that emerges on the other side of this transfer will have more nuclear-armed states, shorter decision timelines, and fewer institutional safeguards than at any point since the first atomic bomb was tested in the New Mexico desert 81 years ago. What do you think the consequences will be? Will the world manage a multi-nuclear Middle East? Or is this the beginning of the cascade that arms control scholars have warned about for decades? Drop your thoughts in the comments. We read every single one. If this analysis opened your eyes, hit the like button, subscribe, and turn on notifications. Until next time, stay sharp.